back to another episode of Insider Knowledge. My name is James, and today I'm going to be talking about bonds and bond charges. Now, bonds can be called insurance bonds, investment bonds. Sometimes they're called custodians of the assets, and they're used offshore everywhere. Now, just to be clear, offshore bonds have been available in the UK for years as well, but nowadays less so, and I'll come on to that in a moment. Offshore, they're used within pensions, they're used for savings plans, they're used for lump sum investments, they're used for just about everything. And the reasons why they're used, the reasons why you might be watching this video to find out a bit more information about them, is because they're supposedly cheap, tax efficient, they have a great deal of protection, often places like the Isle of Man are cited. They've got guarantees linked to them. They're free. They're free because obviously you're not having to pay for the advice, whatever that may be, the pensions advice, investment advice. And they're usually backed by big names, which I won't go into in this video if you don't mind. So on that basis, I'm sure that everyone overseas has to assume that bonds are just sold for everything because they're just so good. And clearly they must be great in the UK as well. Only they're not. And that's a bit of a problem, isn't it? Bond sales in the UK have declined year on year, and at the moment they're continuing to decline. So why is that? If they're so fantastic, if they have all these advantages? Well, the reason is that in the UK we have explicit declaration of fees and charges. That means that every single fee and charge that a client receives on a fund, we have to declare to them. And what has become patently obvious is that offshore bonds are not very competitive. And they're not very competitive for a number of reasons. They actually hide a lot of the charges which the clients are subject to within things like the fund charges. So outside it may look as though the bond is a relatively cheap wrapper, but the funds that are underlying in the bonds are actually charged out at quite a high annual fee. Those same funds are available through other custodians, non-bonds, for a lot less. Sometimes anywhere between 30 to 70% less. So you can see there's a considerable difference. Now you might say that's not going to make any difference. Well, that's not the only additional charge we're talking about here. Bonds are sold through advisors for free, since you don't have to pay for it. Only you do. What you have to pay for is the advice through a commission charge. Now, again, in the UK, we have to declare any fees that we receive. Commission is now banned, and therefore all those charges have gone. Overseas, that's not the case. And typically you're going to find the commission charges are levied on any bond somewhere in the region of 1 to 1.5% per annum over a period varying between typically 7 years, sometimes 8 years, sometimes 10 years, and in extreme examples on the entire life of the bond. That means every single year you might be paying an additional 1% forever, just because you took out a bond. Now, do you have to use bonds for everything? Do you have to use them for pensions? Do you have to use them for investments? You'll be told they're very tax efficient. Sometimes you are going to have to use a bond. It doesn't mean you have to use the bond that's being put in front of you with the high commission though. So yes, bonds do have a place, especially with some tax planning. Should they always be used? Absolutely not. I'm absolutely clear that in many cases, I don't want to put a percentage on it, bonds are being missold. They're being sold to people simply because they generate between 7 and 8% commission. So the advisor selling the bond is generating a huge amount of money for themselves in the process of selling, they will say recommending or advising the bond. So is it possible to avoid these charges? Yes, you can have bonds without all of the commission charges, but they are still probably going to have the underlying fund charges that I mentioned earlier on. The way to get around it completely is to actually not have a bond. And it's not a necessity to always have a bond, because some countries don't even recommend, they don't even recognise rather than recommend, they don't even recognise the tax efficiency of bonds. So again, it's all about taking advice in the right place at the right time from the right people. Anyway, all of this information is covered on our website, and I will be doing other videos about bonds and their charges, actually aiming to talk about specific things linked to the bonds. But for now, that's everything. Thanks very much for watching Insider Knowledge. I hope this has been helpful for you. I will be able to come back to you again, I hope soon, with some more financial tips and advice. So I look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.